You think you've moved on, don't you? You've spent years convincing yourself that everything is okay, that the absence didn't leave deep scars, that you're strong enough to have handled it on your own. But let me tell you a truth that will bother you a little. The absence of a father in your life shaped who you are today in ways you can't even imagine. And the worst part, you keep repeating the same patterns without realizing it, thinking they are conscious choices when, in fact, they are just automatic reactions programmed back in your childhood. Look, I know it's hard to admit this. We live in a society that values overcoming adversity, that applauds those who won, despite the difficulties. And you've probably heard 1,000 times that you don't need anyone to be happy. But here's the truth, that few have the courage to say, growing up without a father figure isn't just about not having someone to play ball with on Sundays or teach you how to shave. It's about losing a fundamental mirror for the construction of your identity. It's about navigating life without one of the most important maps a human being can have. And this leaves silent consequences that affect everything from how you relate to people to how you deal with money, success, and even your own masculinity or femininity. Now, before you close this reading thinking I'm going to play the victim or fill you with self-pity, relax. That's not the goal. What I want is to show you the invisible patterns you carry, to bring to light what is operating behind the scenes of your life, sabotaging your relationships, your career, and your inner peace. Because only when you see these patterns can you begin to change them. And I guarantee you, when you understand what I'm going to show you here, many things in your life will begin to make sense. Let's start with the most obvious, but which goes unnoticed by most people. You have enormous difficulty trusting others. I'm not talking about that healthy distrust that everyone should have, like not giving your bank password to the first person who comes along. I'm talking about something deeper, more visceral. It's that feeling that deep down people are going to let you down, that you always need to have a plan B, because you can't really count on anyone. You may even have friends, partners, co-workers, but there's always a part of you on guard, waiting for the moment they'll let you down. Do you know why this happens? Because the first person who should have been a constant in your life simply wasn't there. Your brain learned very early on that even those who should stay can leave. And this lesson was so deeply ingrained that now you apply this filter to all your relationships. The result? You push people away before they can hurt you, create emotional distance even when you're physically present, and end up sabotaging precisely what you want most: true and lasting connections. There's more. You probably struggle with something called imposter syndrome, but you don't even realize it comes from the same source. It's that persistent feeling that you're not good enough, that you're pretending to be someone you're not, that at any moment they'll discover you're a fraud. You may have diplomas on the wall, achievements on your resume, professional recognition, but there's still a voice inside whispering that you don't deserve any of it. Look, that voice. It's the echo of that child who wondered why they weren't enough to make their father stay. It sounds cruel when I put it that way, but it's the stark truth. Your subconscious made a dangerous association. If my own father didn't want to stay, it must be because there's something fundamentally wrong with me. And now you spend your whole life trying to prove your worth, seeking external validation, working to exhaustion to compensate for this feeling of not being enough. Want to see how this manifests in practice? You're one of those people who works 10 times harder than your colleagues because you're afraid that if you slow down, they'll fire you or realize you're not as competent as they think. You can't receive a compliment without thinking the person is just being polite. When you achieve something, you attribute it to chance, luck, circumstances, never to your own merit. And the worst part is, you sabotage yourself precisely when you're about to achieve something great. because a part of you still believes you don't deserve to succeed. Now, let's talk about romantic relationships, because that's where things get really interesting. If you're a man who grew up without a father, you probably have immense difficulty understanding what it means to be a good partner, because you never had a role model to observe. You didn't see how a man should treat a woman on a daily basis, how to deal with conflicts maturely, how to balance strength and vulnerability. So you go through life trying to figure this out on your own, making far more mistakes than you would have if you had had that reference. And there's another very common pattern. You tend to choose partners who, in some way, replicate this dynamic of abandonment. It could be the woman who is emotionally unavailable, the one who always has one foot in and one foot out of the relationship, or the one you know from the beginning won't work out, but you insist anyway. Why? Because your unconscious is trying to rewrite the story. It's as if a part of you thinks, if I can make this person stay, it proves that I have value, that I wasn't the problem back then. If you're a woman who grew up without a father, the patterns are different but equally destructive. You probably have difficulty recognizing healthy men because you never had that reference point of what a reliable, present, balanced man is. So you end up being attracted to guys who replicate that absence. The emotionally distant guy, the workaholic who never has time, the one committed to someone else, the one who promises a lot but delivers little. And when a nice, stable guy comes along who really wants to be with you, you find him boring, dull, or you simply don't feel that chemistry. Do you know what that chemistry you don't feel is? It's the absence of adrenaline, anxiety, the emotional roller coaster your body has become accustomed to. You've been conditioned to associate love with uncertainty, with needing to gain attention, with always being on a tightrope. So when someone comes along who offers security and stability, your brain interprets that as boredom because it lacks that element of danger that you've learned to confuse with passion. There's also that tendency to become overly independent. You've built such a strong armor over the years that you now have difficulty accepting help, showing vulnerability, admitting that you need someone. You've become that person who insists on solving everything alone, who says, I can handle it even when you're drowning, who is terrified of seeming weak or dependent. And look, independence is wonderful, but when it becomes a defense against intimacy, when it becomes a way of never having to trust anyone, it becomes a prison. Let me give you a very concrete example of this. You're going through a difficult time. I don't know. You lost your job. You have a health problem. You argued with someone important. The people around you offer help. They want to be there, but you refuse. You say everything is fine, that you don't need anything. Why? Because deep down you've learned that you can't count on anyone, that asking for help is putting yourself in a vulnerable position where you might be disappointed. So you face everything alone, suffer alone, and then wonder why you feel so isolated. Let's talk now about something that few people connect with paternal absence: your relationship with money and success. It may seem strange, but the father figure is intrinsically linked to the concepts of provision, financial security, and material stability. When this figure is absent, you can develop two equally problematic extremes. On one hand, you may become obsessed with financial security, working like a condemned man, never spending, accumulating resources, as if you were preparing for an imminent catastrophe. You have money in the account, but live with a scarcity mindset, always thinking it's not enough, always afraid that everything could end at any moment. This comes from that feeling that you need to be your own provider because you didn't have anyone to fulfill that role. So now you compensate by creating a financial fortress that, in the end, is more about control and emotional security than about money itself. On the other hand, You may have developed a completely dysfunctional relationship with money, spending everything you earn, failing to save, making impulsive financial decisions. This can stem from a place of self-sabotage, from that unconscious belief that you don't deserve to have good things. So whenever you manage to accumulate something, you find a way to lose it. Or it can come from an attempt to fill that inner void with material things, thinking that if you buy enough, if you have enough, that feeling of incompleteness will go away. Spoiler, it won't. And there's something that affects both men and women who grew up without a father, but that very few people realize. You have difficulty dealing with authority. You may be excessively submissive, accepting everything that bosses and authority figures say without questioning, always trying to please, always afraid of disappointing. Or it may be the opposite. You have a serious problem with anyone who tries to tell you what to do. You rebel against hierarchies. You have difficulty accepting feedback. You interpret any correction as a personal attack. In both cases, what's happening is that you never had the chance to develop a healthy relationship with male authority. So now you either idealize these figures too much or reject them completely. Look how this shows up at work. You have a boss who could teach you a lot, who is genuinely trying to help you grow, but you interpret their guidance as criticism. You become defensive. You miss valuable opportunities because you can't receive healthy mentorship. Think of companies like Amazon or Apple, which were not by chance built by people with complex or absent father figures, Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs. They channeled this wound to build empires. But look at the pattern. Compulsive workaholics, difficulty delegating, need to control everything, complicated personal relationships. I'm not saying you need to build a billion-dollar company to deal with your issues, but you can see how these patterns appear even in the most successful ones. There's also the issue of gender identity. And here, I'm not talking about sexual orientation, but about how you relate to your own masculinity or femininity. Men who grew up without a father are often confused about what it means to be a man. You try to put this puzzle together by picking up pieces from various places. Movies, series, friends, the surrounding culture. The problem is that many of these references are distorted or extreme. So you may end up adopting a toxic masculinity, thinking that being a man is about never showing emotions, solving everything by force, dominating others, being sexually aggressive. Or you go to the other extreme, completely rejecting anything associated with traditional masculinity, being afraid of being sexist, becoming excessively passive or confused about your own place in the world. What you needed was that balanced model, someone who showed you that you can be strong and vulnerable, assertive and kind, a provider and emotionally present. For women, the absence of the father creates confusion about how to relate to masculine energy in general. You may develop a deep distrust of men, seeing them all through the lens of that original disappointment. Or you may go to the other side, idealizing the male figure too much, putting men on a pedestal, believing that you need a man to be complete, validated, protected, and neither of these extremes is healthy. Look, I've dealt with cases of women who were super successful professionally, owners of their own businesses, financially independent, but who completely transformed when they entered a relationship. Suddenly, all that strength and autonomy disappeared. They became insecure, needy, accepted crumbs of attention, submitted to situations they would never tolerate in other areas of life. Why? Because there was that internal void that they tried to fill through their partner, that need to finally have a man who would stay, who would choose them. And let me tell you something that is particularly cruel. The way you raise your own children is profoundly affected by having grown up without a father. If you are a man, You may be so determined not to repeat the pattern that you end up going to the opposite extreme, becoming overprotective, suffocating, or immersing yourself so much in the role of provider that you forget to be emotionally present. Or you may be so afraid of failing as a father that you avoid having children altogether, depriving yourself of that experience because you think you don't know how to do it right. If you're a woman, you might be compensating for the absence of your children's father by being both father and mother at the same time, carrying a burden that shouldn't be yours alone, exhorting yourself trying to fill both roles. Or you might be so anxious to give your children the father figure you didn't have that. You end up choosing the wrong partners. Prioritizing. Having a present father over, having a quality father, exposing your children to problematic situations because you're desperate not to replicate your own history. Now, here's a truth that will hurt but needs to be said. You're probably passing on some version of these traumas to your children, even with the best intentions. That difficulty you have trusting your children are seeing it. That way you sabotage yourself. They're learning it. That fear of abandonment that makes you cling too much or distance yourself too much. It's shaping how they will relate to other people in the future. And look, I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it because you need to consciously break this cycle. You need to do the work of healing your own wounds before they become your children's wounds. And that means stopping pretending everything is okay, stopping sweeping these issues under the rug, stopping believing that just because you've gotten over these things, they're no longer affecting you. Let's talk now about something that almost no one mentions: how the absence of a father affects your spirituality and your worldview. The paternal figure is deeply connected to our concepts of divine protection, universal order, cosmic justice. When your earthly father is absent, it can create confusion about the existence of a heavenly father or any higher power that takes care of you. You may become overly religious, seeking in God that paternal figure you lacked, creating a relationship of spiritual dependence where you don't make decisions without seeking divine signs, where you transfer all responsibility to a higher power. Or you can go to the other extreme, becoming skeptical, atheist, completely rejecting the idea of something greater that takes care of the universe because, well, if even your own father didn't take care of you, why would a God do it? And there's another fascinating pattern: your ability to dream, to have ambitions, to believe in a better future may have been seriously affected. The father, in his symbolic function, represents the principle of possibility, of you can be whatever you want to be, of belief in potential. When this figure is absent, you may develop a very low ceiling for your aspirations, unconsciously limiting what you believe is possible for your life. Look at this pattern in practice. You look at people who have achieved great things and think that must be cool. But that's not for me. You have ideas, dreams, desires, but you always find a reason not to pursue them. You always have an excuse about why you're not ready, you're not good enough, it's not the right time. Deep, too, you're operating based on that message your subconscious recorded. You're not special enough to have great things. After all, not even your own father thought you were worth staying. And here's something very few people understand. You've probably developed emotional hypervigilance that's exhausting you without you realizing it. Your nervous system is constantly on alert, looking for signs of rejection, abandonment, disappointment. You'll read between the lines of every message, analyze every tone of voice, interpret every pause in a conversation as a possible indicator that something is wrong, that the person is going to leave you. This isn't paranoia. It's an adaptation you've developed to try to predict and avoid the pain of abandonment. The problem is that living in this state of hypervigilance is exhausting. You're constantly tense, never able to fully relax in relationships, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And ironically, This very hypervigilance can create exactly what you fear. Because nobody can stand being in a relationship for very long with someone who is always looking for trouble, always on the defensive, always testing whether the person will stay or leave. Let me give you a very specific example of this. You're in a relationship that's going well. The person is being attentive, present, but one day they take a little longer to respond to your messages. Suddenly, your brain panics. You start creating scenarios in your head. They're losing interest. They've met someone else. They're distancing themselves. So what do? Either you distance yourself first, creating distance to protect yourself, or you keep nagging, questioning, creating conflict where there wasn't any. And the person who was just busy with work or dealing with something gets confused by your disproportionate reaction. Now, let's get to the practical side of all this. Because it's no use me showing you the problems if I don't give you ways to start changing them. The first thing you need to understand is that recognizing these patterns is not a weakness. It's the first step to breaking them. You can't change what you don't recognize. So, the simple fact that you're reading this far and identifying these dynamics in yourself is already a gigantic step forward. Start by observing your relationship patterns. The next time you find yourself choosing someone emotionally unavailable, pause and ask, why this person? What about them is replicating the dynamic I know? The next time you find yourself creating distance from someone who is being nice to you, ask, what am I afraid of? What old story am I projecting onto this new situation? This kind of conscious self-observation already begins to create space between the automatic pattern and your response. Seek professional help. Look, I know there's still a stigma about therapy, but I'll be straight with you. You're not going to solve these issues alone. You need someone trained to help you untangle these knots that were made decades ago. Look for a psychologist who works with issues of child development, relational trauma, or psychodynamics. If you can afford it, invest in it. If not, look for free or low-cost psychological support services at universities that have psychology programs. Actively work on developing confidence. Start small. Ask for help in situations where you would normally do everything alone. Accept invitations that you would normally refuse. When someone offers you support, try saying yes. Thank you instead of no need. I can handle it. You will train your brain that it is possible to trust, that not everyone will disappoint you, that you can have needs and still be worthy of love and respect. Develop the practice of conscious vulnerability. This doesn't mean venting to everyone or putting yourself in emotionally risky situations, but it means allowing safe and trustworthy people to truly see you. Share what you are feeling, admit when you are having difficulty, talk about your insecurities with those who have proven to be worthy of that trust. Yes, it's scary, but it's the only way to create real connections. Regarding this issue of seeking external validation and feeling like an imposter, start building internal validation. Keep a journal where you write down your accomplishments, no matter how small. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you did well. When someone compliments you, instead of dismissing or minimizing it, practice simply saying thank you and truly absorbing the compliment. Read books like Mindset by Carol Dweck, which talks about growth mindset, or The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which helps you understand how to build new patterns. For financial matters, educate yourself about money. Read books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yes, the irony of the title doesn't go unnoticed, but the content is valuable. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Or investing. The Secrets of George Soros and Warren Buffett by Mark Tier. Learn about financial education, not just for the money itself, but because Having control of your finances gives you that sense of security and autonomy that you seek so much. If you have children or plan to have them, make a conscious effort not to pass your traumas on to them. Seek positive male role models to put in their lives. Uncles, grandfathers, mentors, coaches, teachers. If you are a man, strive to be the father you didn't have, but do so through therapy and personal work, not just with good intentions. If you are a woman, don't compensate for the absence of their father by being too permissive or too strict. Seek balance and professional help to navigate this. Regarding relationships, learn to identify what is healthy chemistry and what is trauma disguised as passion. A good relationship shouldn't be a constant emotional roller coaster. Security, stability, and predictability aren't boring. They are the foundation of something lasting. Read Attachment by Emile Levine, which explains attachment styles and how they affect relationships. Understand your pattern and consciously work to change it. Practice forgiveness, not for your father, but for yourself. Forgiving doesn't mean saying that what happened was okay. It means stopping carrying the weight of anger and resentment that is only hurting you. You can do this through therapy, spiritual practices, a symbolic letter that you write but don't send. The goal is to release the emotional energy that is trapped in this wound so that you can use it to build the life you want. Change your internal narrative. You are not a victim of your father's absence. You are a survivor who is learning to thrive despite it. This change of perspective, from victim to protagonist of your own story, is fundamental. Every time you catch yourself thinking, I am like this because my father wasn't there, change it to, I can choose to be different, even though my father wasn't there. Surround yourself with people who model healthy relationships. Observe couples who have balanced relationships, parents who are present and loving, people who trust each other without games. You can learn by observation what you didn't learn at home. Seek mentors, older and more experienced people who can guide you in the areas where you feel lost. Look, I know all of this seems like a lot, that it can be overwhelming to realize how many layers this wound has. But here's the most important truth of all. You are not condemned to repeat these patterns for the rest of your life. Yes, growing up without a father leaves marks, but these marks don't define your destiny. You have the power to consciously choose who you want to be, how you want to relate, what legacy you want to leave. The difference between remaining trapped in these patterns and breaking them lies in doing the difficult work of looking inward, recognizing the wounds, seeking help, and practicing new behaviors until they become natural. It's not quick, it's not easy, but it's absolutely possible. And every small step you take in that direction is a victory over that old programming. So here's my challenge for you. Choose one thing, just one of the areas I mentioned here, where you recognized a destructive pattern in your life. It could be how you relate to others, how you handle money, how you self-sabotage at work, anything. And in the next 2 weeks, make a conscious effort to act differently in that area. Write down what happens, how you feel, what changes, and tell me, after reading all this, which pattern did you recognize as the strongest in yourself? Which of these dynamics is impacting you the most right now? Do you have the courage to admit below where this appears in your life? Because look, sharing this, even with strangers on the internet, is already an act of vulnerability and courage that begins to break the pattern of isolation and hyper-independence. You deserve to have healthy relationships. You deserve to feel safe and confident. You deserve success without self-sabotage. You deserve love without constant anxiety. And all of this is possible, but it requires you to stop pretending that absence didn't affect you and start doing the conscious work of healing these wounds. Now tell me, are you ready to begin this journey? Are you willing to look at these uncomfortable truths and do something about them? Because if you've made it this far, if you've read all this and are recognizing yourself, then you've already taken the first step. It doesn't stop here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I'll continue bringing you content that helps you understand these deep patterns and, more importantly, transform them. This is your chance to rewrite your story. Don't waste it.